potential of this, some people at Columbia University took a look at metropolitan New York, to look at the potential for food production inside the borders of metropolitan New York. So this is Manhattan, Brooklyn, the Bronx. This is the municipality of New York. So they took a look at that. Inside the border of New York, you have 2,000 hectares of unused land, 20,000 hectares of parks, 20,000 hectares of private gardens, and 15,000 hectares of rooftop.
哥伦比亚大学呢，他们就是研究了纽约市里面可以用的土地，结果他们发现，这是他们统计出来的结果，有2000亩的没有用的地，然后有2万亩的公园，有2万亩的私人公园，还有15000亩的屋顶或者是空中公园。
A generally accepted figure in the temperate part of the world, Europe, the United States, is that you can produce 50 tons of plant food per hectare. Those were the figures that the Americans used for this study, and I've just been to a conference in Korea where a German professor from Berlin said that is the accepted figure of all of the gardens in Berlin. The urban garden in Berlin can produce 50 tons of plant food per hectare. In this country you can probably produce 100 tons of plant food per hectare because you have such long seasons and you have an all year round production system. This comes from a temperate region with a growing season from April till October. So these 50 tons come only from an 8-month, 9-month growing season. 8 months actually.
在温带国家呢，每1公顷吧，不好意思，每1公顷可以有大概50公吨的植物的农作物可以，你可以种50公吨的农作物。那我刚刚去了韩国，那有一位德国的教授说，在柏林每1公顷可以种50公吨的粮食。可是我认为在台湾，因为你们有比较长的温暖的季节，所以每1公顷可以种大概100公吨的食物。
That was New York. The world is a different story. But we have already taken 10% of our agricultural area and turned it into urban landscapes. And almost every single larger city on the planet is built on former agricultural land, because that's where the cradle of civilization developed from, was in areas where there was good agricultural land, or at least access to good agricultural land. And it's a lot easier to build on agricultural land than in the mountains or in the wetlands. So it's typically good agricultural land that is lost to urbanization. And we are losing 50 New Yorks per year if the present development continues.
通常当我们在建造城市的时候呢，我们通常会在可耕地上面建造城市，因为这比在山上或者是在一些比较难去的地方建造城市容易得多。而我们现在每1年都少了大概50个纽约这么大的可耕地。
This is a huge challenge. We are losing this much land, and we are not properly. We're losing it from agriculture. We haven't found ways of integrating food production into urban landscapes, at least not in my part of the world. on visiting Korea and Taiwan, I must say that you actually do quite a good job of connecting agriculture and urban landscapes. So when I see the Taiwan landscape, I say that maybe in many ways you are ahead of us in combining food production and urbanization.
这是一个很大的问题。那我们每年损失这么多可耕地，可是却没有找到方法来补偿这个损失。可是我这次来台湾跟韩国，我发现你们在这方面呢，比我的国家还要进步。你们把城市农业做了一个更好的结合。
But is there anybody that we can discuss this with? Is there anybody that we can learn from who has been in a similar problem? But and this is where I say maybe we should talk to the ants about this. Because if you take humankind on one side of the scales and the global population of ants on the other side of the scales, which one is the heavier? Who weighs the most? 7 billion human beings or 5,000 billion ants? Who do you think weighs more? We actually weigh the same. Antkind weighs as much as the global, increasingly obese human population.
所以刚才我们提到的问题，我们应该问谁呢？其实我们可能可以问一下蚂蚁哦。如果把世界上所有的蚂蚁跟世界上所有的人加起来的重量，现在其实是一样的，因为人越来越肥胖，越来越重，所以总重量跟现在世界上所有的蚂蚁是一样的。
We've been around for, as modern civilization, about 8,000 years, 10,000 years. The ants have been here for about 50 million years. So they have a lot of experience. And if you look at the way they've organized themselves, because they live in cities, they farm, they grow crops, they have livestock. Usually there are microorganisms and fungi that they will grow inside their ants' nest, but it's an incredibly complex system. And we hear very little about carbon emissions, very little about congestion around their cities, there's very little juvenile crime, and there's no obesity in the ant population in the world.
所以人类存在其实才现代文明只有8000到1万年左右，可是蚂蚁在地球上已经存在了50万年了，而且它们呢也有城市，它们也有农业，还有比如说种植一些菌类啊，甚至还有养殖一些动物。可是，然后它们的整个城市的结构是非常的复杂的，可是它们没有碳排放的问题，它们没有犯罪的问题，它们也没有肥胖的问题。
Their brain has the computing capacity of the very, very first Apple computer that ever made it into this world. So if they can figure it out, so can we. So I'm actually not worried about being 10 billion people on the planet, because we can learn from the ants that if we are sufficiently efficient and clever and well organized, well then it's not a problem to be 10 billion people on the planet.
其实蚂蚁的脑容量跟第一代的苹果电脑是差不多的，所以如果他们可以想出一个办法来解决这个问题，我们也可以。只要我其实一点都不担心，如果世界上有1000万人的1000亿人的话会怎么样？因为只要我们够有系统，然后能找出一个方法来更好的去 生产粮食的话，我相信我们可以成功的。
Beating the ants at systems design in only one generation is a fantastic opportunity for young people. Getting this right is a fantastic opportunity. But I believe that if you want to do it within the concept of industrial agriculture, I wouldn't encourage you to take that career, because that's not going to be very interesting, because the way the economy is rigged, it will still be about labor substitution with inputs and ever more high technology. But if you choose to become a part of the emerging paradigm of sustainable agriculture, I can promise you that it will not be boring, it will not be dull. Quite to the contrary, it will be incredibly interesting. The agricultural models that will save us will be very different from the existing models.
我们要如何在这一代内就设计出一个食物系统，来替代工业类的生产方式呢？如果我觉得很重要的就是我们要找出一个可以永续的一种生产方式。
And I know this because I have a dark past as a conventional farmer. The first 10 years of my professional life, from 1984 to 1994, I was a conventional farmer. I grew cereals and grass seed, and I grew it in a highly mechanized system. So this was my reality in those days. We were 3 people to manage 300 hectares to grow these crops. I had only 3 customers, sometimes only 2. Those were the large grain merchants, and the 1 or 2 grain merchants and 1 seed merchant, and that was it. And we turned over, the farm turnover was $1 million per year. And if I had stayed in that production system, the only thing that would have changed here in these figures would that instead of 3, it would have said 0.7 today. Over these last 15 years, technology has moved industrial cereal agriculture even further down that road. So I would have been if there wouldn't have been enough work for me for 1 year, I would have to take an outside job to manage 300 hectares. That will be the reality in commodity-based agriculture in Europe. But no, sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
我以前其实是有一个黑暗时代的，就是我本来是一个传统的农夫，从1984年到1994年，我大概只有包括我有3个员工，然后我们3个人呢照顾了300公顷的地，而且我只有3个顾客。如果到今天我还是这样的话，那么因为科技越来越厉害，所以我到现在可能就只有0.7个员工，我必须还要再去做另外一个工作。
Then I became an organic vegetable grower and vegetable pusher. I sell the vegetables that I grow not to a wholesaler, but I sell them to private households and I deliver them directly to their door. I do that with a number of very talented colleagues and spirited individuals. And the reality is very different now, because it's not a $1 million turnover farm, but it's a $45 million turnover farm or farming system, because we are we're raising these crops on 3 farms now, not just on 1 farm. It employs 130 people, and it has 45,000 customers. So look at this option compared to what I said before. If I kept my original path, there would be 0.7 employees and maybe just 1 customer. And my guess is that that customer would be telling me what to do. Instead of today, I'm telling 45,000 people what to eat. And that's a much more interesting reality. And this organization employs lots of graduate students. The other one would just employ me. So this is an interesting organization to be part of. Lots of diversity, lots of stuff going on. So I can only say that if you want to stay in agriculture or choose a career in agriculture, this is a strategy that promises a lot more than the other one.
所以我今天呢，就是变成了一个有机农夫。那今天我的公司，的营业额从以前的100万变成现在的450万。我们有130个员工，然后现在如果我以前还照着以前的方式，那我现在可能只有0.7个员工，还有1个顾客。可是，现在呢，我可以有这个权利告诉45000个顾客说，他们应该吃什么，而不是让我唯一的顾客告诉我应该怎么去耕作。我们的公司里面呢，请了很多的大学生，还有研究生。所以我认为，如果你想要继续在农业的话，这是一个非常可行的一个方法。